with all kind of calls from calling callers on this subject, which seems to be a really hot topic on projections placed, and we are trying to narrow it down to those projections that are placed on individuals as well as the children and
Mm.
other family members in terms of what we want to be. And the last thing we stopped off with was whether or not there are certainly issues that are confronted by the black community, but just trying to delve a little bit deeply into this to determine whether or not the level of projected success, the level of projected education, how those things factor into the black experience. Will?
Well, the education starts. Well, man, that goes way deep.
We're not educated.
Yeah, we're educated, but we're educated in the wrong way. We're educated in a way that's not conducive to our growth. We're educated with information that's not useful to what we're talking about and to who we are. We're educated into various factors, not based upon the things or the subjects or the direction we would like to go. Many things that we do are contrary to who we are, and therein lies the conflict in relationships, the conflict in not trusting one another, the conflict that we have. Even if you took a church, I don't care what church it is, there are going to be internal conflicts in the place where there's supposed to be peace. So in your neighborhood, in your church, it's going to be reflected throughout everything that we do because it's ingrained in who we are. And we've learned that indirectly and directly.
On the subject, you just piqued my interest on that, especially as it regards education. Are you saying that the educational system is flawed and has let down the black community? And but this is particularly the case as we move forward and integration has taken place, and our black children are educated in the same institutions of higher learning as their white counterparts. What sets each group apart, in your opinion?
Well, when you're being educated by a group of people that don't have your best interests or that has other set of goals, then the people that are educated by another group of people that have a different background, that have a different history, that have a different set of goals, if you put two children in that same educational process, one is going to come out above and one is going to consistently come out below.
Are those the black children you're speaking
The
of?
black children, I believe, are going to consistently come out below, because it's like if you take a lion and you put him in the school with the tiger, even though they're both in the cat family, you can't educate both of those in the same way. One has to receive an education that's specific to his growth and development. So a lot of things that we've learned are not necessarily beneficial to our growth and development. It's beneficial to you getting a job, but not necessarily to your growth and development as a person, to your character, to your being of who you are.
Do you feel that the projections that we as black parents that we make upon our kids today, do you think that those projections are fair given what obstacles that our children face, and certainly there are a lot of obstacles that they face every day in terms of trying to be successful in life and trying to find a mate that they can simply grow with?
I think the obstacles we face are set out from the beginning, from the miseducation. The miseducation creates the difficult and conflict within the relationship.
Now, do you feel that those conflicts later on spill over into your intimate relationships?
Of course.
And how does that affect men and women,
Well,
both most separately and as a couple? You understand?
right. If you're entering into an educational situation where you're out to get a job and then you face all this racism and the man can't achieve his highest point of making a salary or making him what he feels he deems to be a man, and a woman can't become what she thinks to become a woman, or we take on a different definition of what it takes to become a man or a woman. And then you go out into the world and try to achieve these false definitions of who you think you are. And then we place that responsibility upon one another. And then we try to enter into relationships with this fantasy of what a man should be and what a woman should be. But no one can live up to these expectations, nor can you can grow from these false expectations. And so you end up in a situation that's not based in reality or that's not based in God. And therefore, you're going to have conflict when you're in those situations.
Now, as it relates to a man and a woman, I know it's discussed in chapter 4 of your book, and you go into a little bit of detail as to how these projections have affected, particularly our sisters, in terms of how they relate to their spouses or their significant others. Could you go into that a little bit for us?
Well, like I said before, there's different avenues. A lot of women get into the independent, but there's no such thing as being independent. It takes a village to raise a child, and everybody in the village are children. There's only one shepherd, there's only one God. And so once we take on false identities or false situations, especially, let me clarify by saying I think women are goddesses. I think they're the first, the Alpha and the Omega. I mean, even Jesus was birthed by a woman. So if you look through history, or if you even look through African spirituality, you'll see that some of the first goddesses and the most powerful goddesses are women. And that helps create the balance between men and women. And you look in modern day or Christianity, the woman is written out of the page. So I understand the effort for her to create an identity for herself. But the identity must be based on God. But a lot of women say, okay, if it's good for a man, then it's good for a woman. But just so happened they picked the worst man to betray. If he can go and sleep with 1,000 women, why can't a woman do it? That's equal equality. But that's not a man. That's an immature adult male that's yet to fulfill his role as a man. And so why would a woman or women even use that as an example? I understand there's a double standard involved, but why would you pick that as an example as a man to imitate or even bring up in conversation, saying if he can do that, why can't I do this? Why would you compare yourself to the worst apple in the bunch? And so I think the mentality and the education or the situations that we embark or that we follow leads us to a path that's further from where we're trying to go.
Thank you, sir. As our final point of discussion to wrap up this segment on projections, what do you feel are the keys to our community, the Black community, I mean, being more successful and also placing realistic expect projections on our children and on our significant others? And we know that within our community, there's lots of struggles, some of them financial, some of them personal, some of them even spiritual,
Right.
that we experience in our communities. How can we pull all that together so that we could have lasting, loving relationships with each other where everyone is expected and everybody feels good about themselves?
Well, I don't think you're going to get everybody in any situation to do the right thing. Because even Harriet, that's why Harriet Tubman had a shotgun. She only could save so many. She said she could have saved more if everybody identified with themselves as the slaves and not necessarily free, or what the thought process is. And so in having meaningful relationships, I believe there are only going to be a certain amount of groups that will identify with the causes that we're going through. As with the times of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, everybody wasn't on board. Actually, many hated the people who came to help them out of the situation, saying that they were stirring up trouble. The first place you have to look, or if you want to make a change, is you have to change yourself. You have to look within. I believe that's where God lies, within each one of us. If you never look within, then you will never get the right education. If you don't look within, you will never get the guidance you need. Because in the end, you have to answer to yourself. If you go seeking outside of self for what you already have, then you only could get the wrong answer. That means it's like a dog chasing his tail. If you're seeking what you already have, you're just taking time away from being productive for what you could be doing. So in having a meaningful relationship between men and women and in a Black community, it all starts with self. If you don't start with who you are, if you don't look within yourself, if you don't seek to change yourself, then how can you help change someone else? How can you change your community if you can't change the inside of you or your character flaws? As an old song used to say, sweep around your own front door before you go and try to sweep around mine.
Well, that's a wrap. And we've spent the hours, been well spent, and we hope that you gained something from it. And there's one last burning question from many of our callers, and I'm just going to lay it right out there. Our callers interested, Mr. Hickson, what's your own status?
I am single. I am available. I'm looking.
You've heard it first here. He is available for the taking, ladies, so
Take me.
hit him up.
Take me now.
Let me go. Let me go. Oh, man.